Hey guys, welcome to another online class. I hope you enjoyed sleeping in today. So today we're going to talk about teases, and teases are important for a variety of reasons. The obvious reason we want to do teases is to attract people to watch a newscast and to try to get them to stick around longer, but they can play other roles too. They can be important for a station's identity, for example. You'll see examples of that. Fox 34, Your Health is next, or coming up on Fox Talk 950, Double T Insider does this a lot if you listen to sports radio. So a lot of times teases can be important to your brand identity in addition to trying to get people to stick around and come back and watch more of your newscast. Now, you don't want to mislead viewers. You want to be honest. You don't want to be too alarmist, and I'm going to share some really funny examples of that coming up here in a little while, including a really funny one from Jon Stewart. So stick around for that. You want to avoid tabloid language. So, for example, I heard a tease, New Jersey, all of New Jersey is mourning over the death of Whitney Houston. I'm like, really? I mean, maybe, it's possible, and it was a real shame that she ended up dying, but it didn't surprise everybody. Do you really think everyone was in mourning over the loss of Whitney Houston? And forgive me, I'll betray this. I probably wouldn't have been because I go, celebrities. I mean, I'm callous about that. But you have to think, is your tease actually true or right? So again, something to think about not only with teases, but with your writing in general. Take some time with teases. You don't want to mislead, but you do want to be creative. And always remember that core principle. What's the tease for? It's to try to get as many of you as possible to stick around longer in my newscast. And so that's the thing you want to keep in mind. There are different kinds of teases, and I'll give you some examples. So there's a great big tease called a headline or pre-show tease. And you guys got a glimpse of this when I was doing the newscast last week. So this is a great big tease. Teases multiple stories. It might have elements in it of sound bites. It might have a reporter stand-up in it. It might tease 4 or 5 stories with music, with natural sound. These are sort of big, grandiose teases, and they're pretty complex with a lot of elements. If you have great sound, natural sound, or a really compelling interview snippet you want to use, that's a good place for that in one of these bigger teases that generally are before the beginning of the newscast or at the end of the first block, about 10 minutes into your newscast, when you still have a whole lot of newscast to go. And so think about that. If you've got something really unusual like sound, put it in one of these big teases, these big pre-show teases. Some other kinds of teases that are a lot of fun, and you're going to play with some of these today. There's the mystery tease, and I'll give you some examples coming up in a minute. Question tease. I'll get out of the way in a second so you can see these. Promise. Video teases. Promise tease is important information that you need to know, and that's coming up. And so those are great teases, and I'll give you an example of some of those. In fact, I'll try to give you examples of all of these. Sorry, I have to look and see where I run out of space on the board. Some others are exclusives, only on 7. We used to say that all the time in Miami. It was a certain kind of tease we did. Timely teases. Don't waste time. You've got to watch this story next. The clock is ticking. That's an example of a timely tease, and you'll see examples of that. Personalized teases are very important, and you can take just about any tease and personalize it. So that's an important concept to keep in mind. So a mystery tease, those are a lot of fun, and again, we'll talk about those. A lot of times this tease is about health or saving money. Those ridiculous teases, I showed some of them last week, where something in your house could kill you. That comical Gary Vosat guy, he talked about that stuff. That's a mystery tease, but you have to stick around for it. Question teases are similar. Again, it's there's a way you can save money, and we'll tell you how coming up. It's a little bit of a question, but also a question. So City Council had a vote to change some rules. Will it cost you more money? We'll explain in a couple of minutes. That's a question. It's also a mystery. They often go together. Promise. There's something important you need to know about a new policy. We're going to have all those details for you next. Tickets are short for the Red Raiders game, but you can still get your seat. We'll tell you how coming up. Those are promise teases, and those are important too, and you see those a lot during ratings periods. Video natural sound teases, you guys have seen these. These are kind of shallow teases, but they can be a lot of fun. And this one is funny because I always tell you, don't give the story away in a tease, because then there's no reason for me to stick around. Video teasers are the opposite. If you have spectacular video, like one of those guys in a wingsuit flying through a cave, an amazing rescue, like sheriffs plucking somebody out of a car in a flood, a dog doing something, excuse me, amazing. Those are video teases. And the point there is you want to show the video over and over again. So you put it in as many teases as possible, and you're sort of hinting, we'll tell you what the story is behind this amazing video, but the truth is people want to see that video over and over again. So those are actually good teases. Same with natural sound. And there's an amazing, I saw a video on my Facebook feed today, a guy who works at a rail yard as an inspector, and he barely missed getting hit by a train coming this way, dove off that track onto the next track. Then he had to jump up and dive back as a second train came in on the second track, and he landed on the first track right when the first train cleared. I mean, it was ridiculous, and it was real life video, but you don't have to like tease around that. Just show that video, and you can actually say, we're going to give you another look at this coming up in 10 minutes. Stick around. People are going to stay because they're going to be like, oh my God, I've got to see that again. So that's an example of where it breaks that rule. You can go ahead and give it away. Exclusives. This happens a lot during ratings periods. You'll see stations, by the way, my battery dropped on the microphone, which is why I paused for a sec, but apparently the microphone's still working. Exclusive teases, you'll see those a lot of times during ratings periods. So an investigation of what happens to your luggage at the airport, you can only see this on Fox 34. Stick around and we'll have that story for you. That's an exclusive. Timely, again, I mentioned earlier. Change in city council, the policy takes place at noon tomorrow. We'll tell you what you're going to need to know before that. Personalized, I like this a lot. And this is where your anchor looks at the camera and says, your taxes are about to go up. We have everything you need to know. It sounds like they're talking to one person, even if they have 10,000 people in the audience. So see, those are all different styles of teases, and you're going to want to keep these in mind as you go. And yes, you'll have an assignment. You guys are going to write some teases today. Excuse me. Avoid cliches. Use action verbs. Things are happening. So City Hall voting to change a policy that could have an impact on your wallet coming up. So again, it's that active voice principle. Subject, verb, object, very clear, simple language, conversational, again, just like your news stories should be. Remember your anchor. Certain anchors have different styles. I started getting more and more casual after I reported and was producing for an anchor named Dwight Lauderdale, who worked for the ABC station in Miami. He was actually from South Florida. His name was Lauderdale, like Fort Lauderdale, which was pretty funny, but that was his real name. He used words like folks and, you know, cutting up and you got to be kidding me. And he would say stuff like that on TV, and I loved it. And he would come to us and encourage us to write that way for his stories and his teases. And it was a lot of fun to write for that guy. But think about that. If your anchor man is George Will, who's a much more formal speaker, then consider that person's voice when you're writing the tease. So that's something else to think about. Newspaper headlines and teases. Some people think they're the same. They're not. And what's the difference? A newspaper headline actually tells you the story. A tease doesn't. A tease withholds, except for video teases, and is keeping you on the hook without the information. So the difference, in the Avalanche Journal, and I saw this headline today, Texas Tech ranked 8th in the Big 12. You know, that's all I need to know. I'm guessing, I don't know who, OSU, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Iowa State. I mean, I don't know who. West Virginia might be above Texas Tech, but 8th out of 12, I know what I need to know about that story. We're not doing very good in football. A teasier way to write it would be the Red Raiders found out where they stand in the Big 12. Stick around and we'll tell you. Or better yet, Texas, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, who's the class of the Big 12? We'll tell you coming up. Another thing, and I keep saying we'll tell you, I rarely did that in teases because it's TV news. We show you, we don't tell you. So you could say, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas, Texas Tech, who's the class of the Big 12? We'll have your answer, or we'll show you coming up in a couple of minutes. So that's the difference. I'm not giving the story away at all. I'm not telling you at all who's the class of the Big 12, or even that it's about rankings. The idea is part of the tease is to be enticing with clever language, but part of it is to not drive anybody away from your newscast. So if you start a tease with, if you're worried about your health, or if you're trying to lose weight, or, hey ladies, listen up. Well, you've just eliminated big chunks of the audience with your opening line. So avoid language like that that tells half or 3/4 of your audience, hey, you don't have to pay attention because you're a guy, or whatever. Just try to avoid any language like that. Try to be as vague as possible to appeal to the widest possible audience. That's one of the keys. So here's another funny thing. How do you choose which stories to tease? There's kind of a scandalous thing that happens in TV newsrooms, and you got a little bit of this exposed to you last week when we were sort of throwing together that practice rundown. Sometimes producers will pick a story to put in their show just to tease it. I'll give you an example. I was in Oklahoma City last weekend. I know, it's good to be back. I was up, not at OU, at Oklahoma Christian, but I also visited 2 of the TV stations while I was up there, trying to find relationships with news directors to get you guys hired. So both of those went very well. Keep your fingers crossed. But I was at the news meeting at the local ABC station. So they actually brought me in, and I sat in there and watched them put their story together. And the producers were fighting over the, who was it? The celebrity wedding that was in Italy. Shame on me for not remembering his name. But anyway, they were talking about who was going to get that story. They were fighting over who was going to get the story of the celebrity wedding in Italy. And it ended up going to the producer who had the last half hour at, I think it was at 6:30. They did a half hour. They put it last so they could tease the hell out of it all the way through 2 or 3 earlier newscasts. So it was pretty funny. They picked that story to be in the newscast and put it where they put it exclusively for purposes of being able to tease it again and again and try to get viewers to stick around. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and I've experienced that myself in my newscast. So you look for stuff that's teasable, and a nice way to do it is with some vague language. An example of mystery teases that really work. So if there's going to be like a Thursday night football game, you could say, why is this parking lot full on a Thursday night? I'll show you why coming up. Or, hey, did you notice your traffic was especially bad trying to get out of downtown tonight? There's a reason for that, and we're going to take you there live. Maybe most people in the audience know, but guess what? If you're not a football fan, you may not know that there was a Thursday night football game in town. Our game, of course, wasn't here. It was in Stillwater, sadly, but at least that tease would work. And so that's a way you can tease that, and by not mentioning football, you're not eliminating anybody. It's employing the mystery technique. And you're casting a wide net to try to get people involved. Mystery teases can be a lot of fun. They can also be a really good serving. Why is this room at the Rec empty on a Sunday night? Hey, do you know where you can go 75 miles an hour now in Texas? We're going to show you. Okay, that's something I want to know. That's valuable information, and almost everybody drives. So those are good teases. They're all examples of good mystery teases. So here's some teases I gave you guys, and some of these are actually pretty funny. These were on the Opie and Anthony show on satellite radio, on XM Sirius satellite radio. It's an audio file. I put it on Blackboard. So what I'm going to want you to do is in a second, pause this lecture, go watch that audio file or listen to that audio file of those teases. They're hysterical because some of them are really inappropriate, but they all use this technique, the mystery tease. And give a listen to those. They're actually a lot of fun, even though they're ridiculous. So I would love to personalize those teases. Okay, forgive me in advance. Kelsey, every sex offender in Texas is living in your house. We'll tell you how to get rid of them coming up. Those teases were ridiculous. Please don't write an irresponsible tease like that for a real newscast. But you do have an assignment coming up. If you want to be that ridiculous for your assignment, you can, and I'll read those in class. It'll be fun. But how irresponsible are those teases? Like, in your house? In your house? Come on. Plus, I'm not going to use shampoo on my hair anymore. I'm just going to use soap. If you don't get that, you can go back and listen to those again, and you'll see why. Anyway, it was pretty funny, and those are kind of ridiculous. So I mentioned the different types of teases. These headline pre-show ones are much bigger, much more elaborate. Teasing starts before you start producing your newscast because you pick stories sometimes, like I mentioned, to put just in the newscast for purposes of teasing. Like great video, like Clooney getting married. I remembered his name. So you'll have stories like that you'll put in specifically. Another thing you'll do is you'll do teases ahead to the next newscast. This is increasingly common since so many newscasts do so much news now. In Oklahoma City, we had stations, multiple stations, that did 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5:30. They went to network at 6 and came back at 6:30. Then they had news at 9 and 10 on different channels. And so they would tease each half hour to the next half hour of news, and it would always be something exclusive to that half hour of news. And so that's a technique too, and it's important. And we did a lot of those program teases where we would tease into the next half hour of news, or coming up tonight at 10 only on NBC6. We would say stuff like that too. So that's another kind of tease that teases 30 or 40 minutes ahead into the next newscast. And if you have multiple producers, like one producer for the 4, one for the 5, one for the 6, the 6 o'clock producer would actually write that part of the 5 o'clock newscast because it was for his newscast and he knew what the story was about. So those are typical too. Again, you don't want to give too much stuff away like with a headline, but you do want to entice. So something's going to cost you money. We'll tell you why and how much in 2 minutes. That's a good example of a tease. It's generic, it's vague, it sounds important. I always joke that the most epic tease would be just a guy with a chainsaw, revving the chainsaw, and just saying, "And we're live!" And that's the whole tease. So I actually should shoot that sometime for a bogus newscast. I think it'd be funny. And then you also want to consider the same rubric we used when we were building our news rundown for how you choose a lead story. How important is a story? How immediate? What's the proximity to where we are? How many people does it affect? Those are all factors that go into how you pick what you're teasing and how you go about teasing it. So a lot of the things that apply to building the newscast also apply to teases. Mystery teases are great, and it cracks me up because you'll get inappropriate mystery teases, especially during ratings periods when the stations are trying to drive up their viewership. And so you'll get stuff like, "Something in your medicine cabinet could kill you," like that Gary Vosa thing. Well, so if there's something really vital, sexual predators on the loose, or an active shooter shot some people and then got away, if he's in my neighborhood, it's irresponsible to say, "There's an active shooter on the loose right here in Lubbock. We'll tell you to watch out for him coming up in 2 minutes." No, that's inappropriate. You have to tell me now because that's too important to wait. So don't be inappropriate with your teases, but you can get on the edge of that and actually have some fun. So again, save you money, something important about health, weight loss, tickets to a show, anything like that, a benefit, those can be kind of fun. If it's something really happening right now, it's inappropriate to tease it, and frankly, it ought to be your lead story, and you should go ahead and tell us about it now so we can adjust accordingly. Outside of that, though, you can have some fun. Natural sound and soundbite teases. If you get a great little snippet of a soundbite, say Coach Kingsbury came out after the game and it was like, 158 yards and penalties. Are you kidding me? That's great in a tease, and you don't even have to explain it, So that's the kind of stuff you can sneak in with a soundbite. And I mentioned earlier, we don't tell you in TV, we show you. So we say stuff like, we'll put you in the front row. We'll put you in the driver's seat. We'll show you what to expect. We'll show you how it's going to impact you. So that's a way you phrase it, not only in teases, but in your stories in TV news. Again, active verbs, you can use really active verbs. So hit, pound, slam, costly, like really robust, powerful words. And they can be a lot of fun. And you can have fun also with twists like double entendres. Teachers ask for surgical cuts to spending. Lawmakers want to use an axe. So it's a play off the two. If it's medicine, you can use surgical cuts. And there's all kinds of normally don't use cliches, but you can do that. Michael Leach took a public swing at university administration, so Tech dropped the axe. It's really powerful language, strong words, and you can use those, and it's a lot of fun. Major construction's coming up in Lubbock. We'll show you where you'll be on the brakes. That's active. It's talking about your behavior is going to change because of the story we have coming up. Or hot tempers and cold coffee. That's what you're in for when you get stuck in traffic next week. We'll tell you why and what to avoid coming up. It's a clever line. It's like the last thing I want to do is be pissed off, late for work, my coffee's cold, and I'm still sitting in my car in traffic. It's evocative language. It kind of puts you in the picture, paints a picture for you in that scene. And again, that's a nice way to do it. And then I love comparative teases too, especially if you can skewer somebody like UT or A&M. Which college is more military friendly, Texas Tech or A&M? You might be surprised, and we'll give you the story. Or you could even have some fun with the cliche. So which college is more military friendly, Texas Tech or A&M? Veterans say, guns up. That story in 2. So you might be giving that story away, but there's enough pride that you might want to stick around and watch that. And so that's a fun story. Again, a good example of where you might want to come back. You want to be evocative, you want to be clever, you want to be mysterious. So city council raises property taxes again. No, you just gave the story away. That's a mistake. Your monthly house payment's about to go up. We'll show you how much and why. Okay, that's better because now it's everybody and you're not giving much of the story away. So you are eliminating some people. If you're not a homeowner but a renter, then you've eliminated half that audience. So another way to do it is city council met. It's going to cost a bunch of people more money. We'll explain who and why coming up. That's even better because now I haven't eliminated renters from my tease pool, if that makes sense. Marketing teases, that's another kind, and I hate these kinds. I haven't written it on here. A marketing tease is basically what we used to call a proof of performance tease. And marketing tease is basically, isn't Fox 34 great? And these bug me, and I'll give you an example of all of these kinds of teases coming up. You'll see video links to all of these. The marketing tease bugs me because those are often proof of performance. So when a big story happens, there's a manhunt, police get the guy, and there was extended live TV coverage, a car chase, natural disaster, flooding, and all the stations went out and went extended live coverage on the flooding. And then the next day, they get all their best video, the reporters out there standing in the rain and the water, and they string it all together into a 30-second spot. And they say, didn't we do a great job here on KLBK covering this story? And those always bugged me when I worked in news because I'm like, that's our job. That's what you're paying us for, to go out and cover this stuff. Why should we brag about it? It would have been worse if we sucked and we had nothing to talk about. But those are marketing or proof of performance teases. I don't like those, and you might see those. You do not have to do one of those. And they pop up all over the place. They'll string along all day long telling you how great the news is and telling you to tune back in. Again, be careful about eliminating people. Don't say, hey, football fans, because now all of a sudden if you don't care about football, and this is West Texas, so it's safe, but if you don't care about football, you've lost those people. Here are some examples, and there's things I like and don't like. These are actual teases from KXAN in Austin. It's the NBC affiliate in Austin. People up north may be able to stay warmer during the cold winter months. We'll check out if blood may be a factor. And we'll take a look at a new heart prevention guidelines for women. Plus, why Democrats are saying Governor Perry's playing politics when he could be taking in millions in federal funding to help the state's budget shortfall. So my beef with those teases is, in all three, you've kind of eliminated people. So people up north may be able to stay warmer. Well, what if I don't care about cold or people up north? So now I'm not paying attention if it's just about the weather. New heart prevention guidelines for women. Well, it's heart attack prevention, but anyway, again, that one, I think you're eliminating half the audience. And then shock, Democrats and Republicans arguing about something. You know, I don't know that that's a good tease either. I'm not wild about that whole one. So I don't live up north. I'm not a woman. Politicians argue all the time. You haven't really done anything unusual or unexpected to keep me hanging, to keep me on the hook. And so I don't know that I need to stick around and watch that. A better tease on the last one, and this was Governor Perry and some other governors refused to take an increase in federal funding to increase Medicaid. Medicaid is the state health plan. Medicare is the federal one. The federal government was offering billions of dollars, 100% funding for the first year. Then it would drop to, I think, 90% the second year and down to like 80 or 70% over a few years, leaving states on the hook for 10, then 20, then 30% of paying for their state's health care. And some governors, all Republicans, said, we don't want to be on the hook for that kind of spending. Governor Perry was one of those. There's a funner way, I think a better way to do it. Texas could bring in a lot more money for health care. We'll show you why. We aren't and how it affects you. So I haven't given anything away, and most people are not on Medicaid. Generally, only the poor or disabled are on Medicaid. And so it doesn't affect a lot of people. You want to try to avoid giving that away in your tease. So Texas could have got a whole lot of federal funds where it's not going to happen. We'll tell you why and what it means. Well, okay, now I might stick around because I'm like, God, you could do even better and not mention federal dollars. You could just mention Texas. Texas was in line to get a lot of tax money back. It's not going to happen. We'll show you why. Okay, very vague, a lot of money involved, taxes. I might have to pay attention. So think about that. You can have fun with broader reach with a tease about folks up north who get thicker blood and are more resistant to the cold, which I think is funny. You can play with that without eliminating people who never go where it's cold, never go up north, don't care about the north. So a new study says folks up north have something over us here on Texas. We'll show you what it is coming up. Whoa, what are you talking about? That's like the salsa commercial. New York City, get a rope. You could even have some fun with this. Hey, Yankees are better at something than Texans. It's been proven in a study, and we're going to share it with you coming up. All right, now you pissed me off. I'm going to have to stick around and watch. And by the way, even if you moved to Dallas from New York, and I had a friend some years ago who did, moved from New York to Dallas in the 80s, and was like a complete fish out of water. The whole, yeah, I'm from New York, how you doing? Like that, it was hysterical. He was really proud still of New York. He would stick around and watch that story too, even if it's slamming Texans, because he'd want to have pride in his heritage being from it, being a Yankee. So that's a nice way to write that tease. It's a clever way to do it. and it's a lot of fun. So here's the assignment, and I mentioned there is an assignment. You probably guessed it. You are going to write a tease. What I want you to do is go find 3 news stories. Your choice, any source. I do not need to have the link to the story, but go find 3 news stories, anything you want, any source, and write teases to them. And a tease generally is about 1 sentence per story. So the tease can be short. If you want to format it, so like there's a sentence on camera and then a sentence in video, you can, you don't have to. What I'm looking for is basically a 3 or 4 sentence tease, teasing 3 different stories, and employ some of these things we talked about, especially a mystery tease. Try to not eliminate anybody that you wouldn't want to stick around, like half your audience. Try to use active language and strong words, you know, drop the hammer, surgical cuts, that kind of stuff. Try to be mysterious about it and as broad as possible so you can get as many people to stick around. It's just an opportunity to please, to play with writing some teases. Before you do it, I put links to a bunch of teases right under this on Blackboard. Go watch those teases, have some fun with them. Definitely pick some of those and go through. They're pretty instructive, and you might get some stuff in there you could crib, some techniques you could borrow. Just email me the assignment when you're done. Last thing, just for fun, and I may try to show this in class on Thursday, I put a link to a whole Jon Stewart skit on inappropriate teases, which is hysterical, and which you'll probably want to share with people. So last thing you do, go watch the Jon Stewart making fun of news teases, and email me those again by the end of Tuesday, meaning before I run into you in the hall on Wednesday. Send me those teases, I'll look at them, and I'll share the best ones in class, and get those to me, and I'll see you Thursday.